It's now time to bring you the feature on the show as we focus on the impact of the lingering fuel scarcity on households and especially small and medium-sized enterprises. The federal government has sympathized with Nigerians over unforeseen hardship occasioned by the scarcity and calls for patience in finding lasting solutions to the problem. Now, according to Timipre Silva, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Nigerians deserve the best and the government is determined to set the country on the right path to assuring petroleum product availability and sustainability, which it says is demonstrated in the award of the contract for the rehabilitation of all refineries and the acquisition of some stake in Dangote refinery. Now, looking at the bigger picture, the near-term inflation outlook appears increasingly unpredictable as the petrol shortage crisis and the rising cost of diesel have added to other challenges driving up prices of essential commodities in the country. Now, efforts to rein in fuel supply shock have also not necessarily yielded the best of solutions or results, leading to endless queues at many retail outlets in cities like Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt and other cities across the country. The crisis has worsened gridlock in the metropolis, with thousands of commuters stranded at bus stops. Well, joining me now to discuss this and much more virtually, I have public finance and policy analyst Olusegun Elemo. Thank you very much for joining us on the Breakfast Show this morning, Olusegun.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm happy to join.
Now, in terms of painting a very clear picture of the impact of this lingering fuel scarcity, this has been 2 weeks of harrowing experience for motorists, households and businesses who heavily rely on petrol and other petroleum products. Now, government's pledge to do better and the assurance of availability and distribution of petroleum products to win the people over seemingly has fallen on deaf ears. The problem really is now that the impact of fuel scarcity leaves no room for any explanations. Long queues and unending waiting hours is ridding workers of working hours, affecting businesses and the operational efficiency. Do you think now, at the speed at which government is moving and other players within the petroleum product distribution value chain, do you think at this speed they understand the plight of the average Nigerian, looking at the pace they're looking at to resolve these issues?
I don't think so. I don't think government understands the urgency of this moment. It is what we garbage in that we garbage out. If at the end of the day, we begin to measure the productivity of the country across these inefficiencies that we are experiencing, and then we say that we want and then we're projecting certain parameter of growth for the economy at the end of the year. And when we start the year on this note, with this one, honestly, it is highly disappointing. Number one, that we do not have local refineries that are working, except for the one that we're looking up to, the Dangote refinery. You know, it is sad. It is really, really sad. I had mentioned in a forum earlier that if the adulterated fuel was even refined locally, then we would say that it's a technology problem. It's a local technology problem. But unfortunately, we are depending on imported, petroleum products. And it is sad that, you see, apart from the fact that there are long queues, the other part that is highly discouraging and highly depressing is the fact that nobody is being held accountable. We haven't seen anyone being prosecuted for this, and in a serious country, you would believe that some sort of investigation would have been concluded, because it's a very simple issue. Some people imported this adulterated fuel. Some names and some corporate entities have been mentioned. Nobody has been called to answer for any question. Nobody is being held accountable. Everybody is keeping their jobs. And we have a president that is also the Minister of Petroleum Resources. So, it's just a very, very sad moment. And then again is the fact that when you look at the ripple effect of fuel scarcity on the economy, the fact that there is no power supply to many small businesses, many households, and now have to depend on alternative energy supply using generator that also has to depend on fuel, on petroleum product. And then the government says that it's doing all it can limit the suffering of the ordinary person. I don't think government understands what is going on. I don't think government understands how people feel. I don't think government understands the pulse of the ordinary Nigerian, because if they do, even if we're still struggling to, for instance, if we're still struggling to intervene in the current crisis that we're in that we have to bring in new products and products that have been delivered to depots and stations across the country have to be evacuated or have to be retreated, and then all of that. I feel that if government wanted to make a point that it understands what the ordinary Nigeria is facing on the street, then people should have been held accountable. But unfortunately, nothing like that has happened.
Shagun, now looking at the picture as well, we have the reality on ground today in terms of the promise of government and also some of the facts that they've brought to the fore. Last week, we heard reports of 2.1 billion litres of petrol assured. Early this week, we also had about over 300 million litres of petrol. But the average Nigerian who is either driving in or walking in to get their fuel does not necessarily feel this impact. So there is some level of disparity and a growing mistrust between the government and the people. Do you think all of these figures we are hearing in terms of the supply or the stock available is a far-away cry from what the masses are saying, that we can't just buy fuel?
Absolutely. You see, we thought that when NNPC was privatized, we thought that there would be some higher level of transparency and improved accountability with the way the industry is managed. But unfortunately, it appears that it's getting worse. It's really getting worse. I don't think in the last couple of years, we haven't even had this kind of, economic hardship brought about by fuel scarcity. Now that we have privatized, the oil corporation, we're not having this kind of crisis. So it really doesn't, marry, because there's so much divergence in what is happening right now. And ordinarily, you would think that by now you should have the accurate consumption of fuel, petroleum products in the country as at today. But unfortunately, we don't have data, we don't have statistics as to how much consumption, what is the level of consumption of Nigerians when it comes to petroleum products. So you see, government says, it's importing this through, a number of marketers, but you don't see the products in the country. And some say that these products are being diverted to other neighboring countries. And government then has to pay fuel subsidy on that. So the bottom line is that people are not happy with the situation that we are in right now.
Okay, Shagun, if I may butt in here now, we are wrapping up our conversation, but let's also look at crowd management at this point in time. The tactics employed by filling stations. Yes, there are reports of the NMDPRA going around filling stations and depots to ensure that they perform their oversight function and everyone is playing by the rules. But what do you make of the strategy to put order at filling stations and depots for a well-coordinated dispensation and distribution of the product so that we don't necessarily have this long queues or long waiting hours? What is being said once again on paper is a little different from what plays out. There are either those who are totally shut off, or there is the excuse that some filling stations don't have generators working, or there's power shortage, or something is just wrong. Hence, the crowd management is not well. You see the pictures we have there. Angry Nigerians just because they cannot access crowd management. How would you say this is important to solving this big maze of fuel scarcity?
Just allow the industry to work by itself. I mean, you can imagine if you have to police all the supermarkets in the country because people cannot have access, sachets of milk or tin of beverages, it's annoying. It's annoying. How many filling stations are you going to police? What's the human resource capacity of the regulatory agency? Just allow the market to function. If you allow the market to function properly, people want to do their business. I mean, or even oil marketers want to sell their products. But when the market is distorted, everybody is looking to shortchange the consumers. Everybody is looking to make, excessive gains, excessive profits, and and nobody is being sanctioned. So the buck stops on the table of the president, who is the Minister of Petroleum. Just allow the market to function properly. Once the market functions properly, then there's no need for policing anybody.
Okay. Well, we are waiting to see our refineries working. We're also waiting to see government take action in terms of putting words to action in putting an end to this fuel scarcity. This is already 2 weeks going for far too long, and not too many are optimistic that come next week we would even have a fresh start to ease in the markets. But we'll keep our fingers crossed and see how things play out. Thank you very much for your time on the Breakfast Show this morning, Olusegun Elemo, and we hope for better days ahead.